Hello, world.
What a good intro. Hello, world.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. Are you excited, Nikki?
Super duper. I can't wait.
Look, we're just gonna we're gonna maybe give it a minute, but we're just gonna dive into it because we have a lot to talk about today and we're ready. But I guess as people are coming in, maybe just to warm up the chat a little bit, um, we could talk about what our superpower would be if we had one. I have an example. Recently, I decided that I think a really good superpower besides flying would be the ability to make everyone truly understand each other, what each other is saying, which is kind of a research superpower. Do you have a superpower, Nikki?
That is such a thoughtful and kind superpower because the first thing that came to my mind was to be able to eat food without any sort of consequence.
That's
Like,
an excellent one.
but also to, cure the world's problems, of course.
Well, the understanding one isn't like fully altruistic because I think it would just help me also. Just if we could all understand each other, it would just be a lot easier to function in this world. Okay, well, drop your desired superpower in the chat, if you please. And tell us where you are, maybe too. All right, but we're gonna get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Today we're gonna be talking about how to strategically and effectively use all these new tools that we have to enhance our work without losing our humanity. So by the end of this webinar, we really want you to feel hopeful, excited, and empowered, most importantly, about the future of AI in your work. But before we dive in, we just have a little bit of housekeeping. Feel free to use the chat to interact with each other throughout the session. If you have questions for either of us, we really want to answer your questions. Please use the Q&A to ask questions. We won't be taking them from the chat, and we'll address as many as we can at the end or potentially throughout if we feel like it. This session is being recorded, and we are going to share the recording with all of you within 24 hours. So if you have to step away or you miss something, you'll have the whole thing recorded. All right, so like who are we? I'm incredibly excited to introduce our special guest today. She's a thought leader in the user research space and the founder of the User Research Strategist and a Stephen King fan like myself. Please join me in welcoming the incredible Nikki Anderson. Tell the people
I
about yourself.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, the most important thing is the Stephen King fan. But yeah, hello everybody. I am Nikki. I am a user researcher, mixed methods, I like to call myself, but I'm qual with like a dabble in the mixed methods. Wow, that's recorded forever. I currently live in Jersey, which is part of the Channel Islands, not the United States Jersey. And I really, really, really recommend that you Google Jersey cows because they are the cutest cows in the whole entire world. And that's me.
Are they like just all around the Jersey cows? Like, do you see them when
Yeah, they're
you?
like everywhere. There's like sometimes like the news of Jersey is like cows will get out of the field and back up traffic because they'll just be like, this is where I would like to cross the road.
I love that.
Yeah. And then we have like ducks sometimes that we have like one street, which is like it isn't even like a highway or a motorway. But it's our biggest street and like ducklings will cross. And so like traffic will just be backed up because ducks are crossing the road. No chickens.
I
So
love that.
yeah.
I live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm love the farm animals. I have
Yeah.
cows down the road from me, but they're probably not as Jersey as your cows. Um, Okay, so that's who our wonderful guest is. I am a senior UX researcher at Dscout. I too come from a mixed methods background. I have experience mostly in the gaming and global research spaces. And right now, I'm especially passionate about, you might say even obsessed with research operations. Um, and I've been spending a lot of time exploring how AI can help me build a really good research ops foundation, particularly in building a voice of customer program and really robust repository. So that's what I'm like super stoked on right now.
Cool.
Um, but we're going to talk about all of this. So let's jump right in. The first thing that we want to talk about is thinking about these Gen AI tools that we have now as a thought partner. I hear a lot of people who are new to AI, which is a lot of us, say that they feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start with all of these tools, especially because things are moving so quickly. And my advice is usually just to just start using them, just to see how they work. But Nikki, I'd love to know your take. Like, how would you suggest someone new to AI approach using these tools for research?
Yeah, I love that first off, that idea of kind of just jumping in. And if you feel super uncomfortable jumping in from a research perspective, because this is a new technology for all of us, jump in on like a personal low stakes perspective. Get it to write you recipes, right? Based on what you have in your house and then, or your apartment or your pantry, whatever, and then watch it sometimes hallucinate so that you can understand where it might hallucinate because suddenly you have all these ingredients that you don't actually have. Or, have it teach you how to play tennis, right? Like put in a video of you doing something and have it critique you at whatever it is that you're doing. I took a photo of my courgette plant because I've never grown courgettes before and I'm confused as to what my courgette plant is doing. And I was like, please help me figure out why this isn't giving me courgettes,
And
right? So,
for the Americans, that's eggplant.
sorry, eggplant.
FYI.
Yes. Oh gosh, I've just left that behind. Courgette eggplant. Or zucchini, actually.
Hmm.
Yes.
I'm American. I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
these things.
I mean, I've been both, and clearly I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I think like maybe try a low stakes environment for you to test out and see how it is. And then if you want to then raise that up and bring it into the research space, I think of AI as like an eager intern that is often misguided, that needs a lot of hand holding. So while the efficiency can be there for certain things, you might very well feel, and this is something that I felt in the past, is why am I bothering to do this? This is just as much work or more. And Laurel, I'm curious if you have felt that before.
Absolutely. Um, which is why I think some of the stuff we're going to talk about is going to really touch on that, like providing frameworks for AI to work for you, because it does need like it's not a self-starter. It's not going to really truly understand what you want unless you're so specific. And there are ways that you can like set up these bits of context to then be reused later. So you don't have to provide the context every single time you want it to do something for you. Um, and I love your advice of like just start low stakes, start with recipes, because yeah, when you're using these tools for the first time to like build something really important that's going in front of like your executive stakeholders, that's maybe not the time to like be figuring it out, although you could still. I did not use the AI's advice, but a really fun exercise that I used it for, I guess you could say this is a low stakes thing, but I have a 7-month-old, and before he was born, I was asking AI to help me come up with his name. Did not end up using any of the suggestions, but it was really fun to just see like how it approached that and the questions that it asked me in order to like provide good examples. At one point, it asked me if I wanted to do a an exercise where it would like give me words, like a word association exercise. And I was like, oh, that's fun. That's a good idea. So yeah, I didn't end up using any of that, but it was a great way to see how this thing works. And now I'm using it for really high stakes things.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Um, so I think that in doing that, it sort of turns it becomes less scary because it turns the process into like discovery rather than, oh God, this is something I have to figure out. It's so scary. Um, but along those lines, let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts. One thing we really want to give people in this session is like, here are literal examples you can use. Like, let's be very tactical and practical here. So let's talk about some of your favorite prompts, Nikki, that you have used regularly. We've outlined three areas like where you might use AI to help you. Can you sort of speak to each of these three and then we'll go into details about like the actual prompts that you use to do all of these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am also now this might come as a shock, maybe not. I'm quite a fan of AI. I have seen it mess up to the worst of degrees. Therefore, I am not particularly scared of it because just like anything else that is shiny, if companies decide to replace everybody with AI, they will then fail at a certain point, likely. And we will have this whole resurgence of how AI isn't quite there yet. But I do use it for quite a lot of things. And the first thing is, which is one of my favorites, is cultivating stakeholder empathy. So a lot of times we forget that stakeholders are the users of our research. Ultimately, our stakeholders are the ones that are using the information that we give them to make better decisions. Of course, the users of our products and our services are arguably just as important, but the ones that are actually directly interfacing with our outputs and our deliverables are our stakeholders. And sometimes we forget that we should be making these things accessible for them, relevant for them, and super like relatable to the work that they're actually doing. So oftentimes, for this particular prompt, I will put in something along the lines of, this is like a research plan that I have, or a report that I have, and I ask them to critique from a skeptical product manager, from a skeptical executive, from a skeptical VP of product, from whatever. I ask ChatGPT in particular or any LLM to rip it apart from their perspective, and tell me what's irrelevant, I use this is really pretty language of irrelevant, unclear, or missing, and I sometimes will use what's dumb about this, like what is so stupid, what would make them hate me, like I can get quite into it, and so it's stuff like that will then allow me to maybe see things that I was missing from their point of view. And it's the same for like the collaboration, of like, okay, for this person who's trying to achieve these goals, what is like the one big takeaway, right? What is the one thing that I should be telling them that would help them make a movement forward, in terms of whatever decisions or outcomes they're trying to make. So you can also sit down and say, for product managers, what are some things that are generally important to them? And that could be a jumping off point for you to go then talk to your product manager if you have no idea what you should be saying to them.
It's kind of like you're saying, roast me before someone else does, so I can
Yeah,
be.
100%. Yeah, because
And
I've
I
been
think it's
roasted. It's like a constant roasting in my past, and like that's fine. And like I'm happy. I've gotten roasted after I used these prompts, but it's less often now, and my things like are much more pointed and relevant for the people that I'm speaking to because it's a little bit of like you just have this chance to try to get in their mind beforehand.
Yeah. And all three of these are kind of tied together. It really ties into also, I think, proving the value of what we're doing. Because as researchers, like, it's easy to just be like, but you should care because it matters. But sometimes you have to speak to people about the bottom line and what they're, what they're thinking about. Um, so you also use this. So it's like roast me before someone else does, particularly if, I mean, I have worked with people in the past that I know are like particularly prickly, and like
Mhm.
this can be a great way of sort of giving the AI that context into this is this person's sort of vibe, and like this is the reaction I've gotten from them before. So help me just navigate this conversation with this person.
Yeah.
Um, so similarly, speaking to the AI as if it is the head of product, in order to prove the value, we have another couple examples of actual prompts that you might use here.
Yeah, and I think that these are super important because a lot of times as researchers, we're asked so much like, what about the business? What about the business? What about the business? And that can be like such a pain point, especially if you are either like newer to getting into this business side of research, and you haven't had the opportunity to, understand the full scope of what is the business, right? And this could give you an insight into, okay, like for the head of product, for this particular like situation, what are some important business metrics? What are some important company goals? Because I know a lot of people also have a really hard time, because their companies might not give them company goals. I know that I worked in quite a few companies where like the company goal was like 10x, so clear, so
Hmm.
helpful. And so what you can do is you can put in the company context if you're not getting that kind of goal and concrete information from either your teams or the company, and you can utilize that information to try and build something like a study plan, or a study based on that, so that when you go to pitch these things to your stakeholders, especially if they're skeptical and business driven stakeholders, you have this already like baked into your project. So for instance, for me, like I'm a consultant now. Like I don't work in-house
Hmm.
anymore. And when I did, it was just as important. But as a consultant too, I have to go in and like my proposal has to prove that there is some sort of value that they're getting from bringing me in. Right. And so that is really important for me to be able to speak. And I don't have the company context because nobody's pulled
Right.
me into these meetings and been like, here are our company goals. I try and ask, but there's only so much you can get. And so it's really important for me to say, okay, for this like kind of context and this kind of study, like what are some really important like metrics and goals for this organization that I could hope to move forward with this research?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the consulting piece versus working in-house. What are the like, I mean, within this, like using AI to help you prove the value of your work, I don't know, were you using AI tools when you were working in-house?
Yeah, I was.
Okay, so
Yeah.
can you talk about a little bit about like maybe the differences there? I imagine that we have folks here who are working on both sides, and I wonder if there are like you've had both experiences, so if there are distinct differences between like the approaches you might take.
Yes. So for consultancy, it's a lot more. I use AI now a lot more for the proposal based process, for the pitching process, for outreach, or when somebody reaches out to me and they have something very vague in mind. I
Mm,
have it help me help them clarify, or when I get um, a request for like a company workshop, or even a project, it's like, okay, like let's brainstorm some options that we could potentially do for something like this. It's I so personally, and I did the same thing like in-house, I use it as a brainstorming tool
hmm.
because like if I've whenever I have ever used it as an answer or to do work for me, it has always disappointed me. And
Yeah,
I have always had to almost do more work because I've put in time to have it do work for me. And then that never worked out. So it's always as like a brainstorming mechanism of like, what are perspectives that I'm not seeing, or what are things that these like stakeholders or these clients might be concerned about that they have not told me, right? So it's almost like I'm trying to figure out unknown unknowns.
yep,
And in-house, it's a lot more on the research ops side, I would say, because I don't always have to deal with research ops unless I'm doing like more advisory stuff. But I would say
Mhm.
like in-house is a lot of research ops. And actually, one of the Q&A questions that came through is like, what's a lower left example of using AI for research? Um, and I would say like getting started with research ops within that space. I think that that would be a really great way. That's a little bit more low lift and low stakes, is like going through your entire research process and trying to understand where AI could potentially like impact that in a positive way.
Totally. It's like I mean, it's still important stuff, but it's like the stuff that sort of happens in the background
Yeah.
that isn't in front of your stakeholders immediately. I think that is a really good point. And like I said before, I've been using AI to help me with a lot of research ops stuff, and it really is like it does feel like a safer way of doing it, experimenting and maybe failing and just trying things out where it's not like in front of everyone yet. And then it just helps you optimize your process and your, whatever you're trying to build sort of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think all of these prompt examples really have in common like uh assessing risk before it happens or like um yeah, trying to avoid what might I run into here and how can I avoid that, depending on who
Yeah,
I'm talking to.
absolutely.
All right, so I think next I would love to talk about some of the frameworks that you have used um, to be more strategic and impactful in your work.
Hmm.
I think AI is fantastic for taking like heaps of information and creating structure out of it. So it's like I have all of this stuff I want to tell you, just like put it in order for me. Um, I also just love a framework because I'm like such a Pisces. I'm like just have all my thoughts floating around, and sometimes I need a little structure to work within. Um, so we're going to get into the details of the three of these that you see on your screen here. But first, I would love for you to maybe just speak very briefly to each of these and tell us about your overall philosophy for using AI for this kind of work in general.
Yeah, so for me, frameworks are very helpful because I suffer from blank page syndrome, right? So if I'm just sitting there staring at a blank page, I am not going to do much. I'm going to sit there and have a lot of anxiety about that said
Mhm.
blank page. So frameworks are really helpful for that. And these frameworks essentially are created to stop that from happening, in terms of giving you like almost like a jumping off point and a starting point. And these three are born from the things that are like some of my biggest pain points. So sharpening research goals, stakeholder asks. I get a lot of like very vague requests from stakeholders that need to then be turned into something real.
Mhm.
And this just helps provide like the clarity. And then the pre-mortem is kind of what we were talking about, is like, again, what are we trying to de-risk before we give something out publicly to our stakeholders, or what have we might have missed as well. And then finally, the participant mirror. I'm very aware of like biases that can happen, either when we come from like the recruitment side of things, or even the types of questions that we might ask certain participants. And this can sometimes help you with making sure that you are, because we can't avoid them 100%, uncovering them and aware of them.
I couldn't identify more with the blank page
Yeah.
syndrome. Sometimes it just helps to get something. Here's my mess of thoughts. Give me something, and then I can work with it from there. So let's get in to all of these. I'm certainly going to take these away and use them in my own work. Tell us about the clarity chain.
Yeah, so essentially what I do is I drop something that is vague. So I always drop like a stakeholder question. Since I do work as a consultant, I work long term with clients. With one particular client, we've been working together for 6 months right now, and every month I do a new research project for them. And these projects can come in just like any old stakeholder project, which is very, very vague. And it's like, we want to understand our things better, right? And you're kind of like, okay.
Classic.
And yeah, yeah. We love to understand things. And so like what I try and do is put in the ask and try and rephrase it into like at least one clear research question or giving me follow-up questions for that stakeholder so that I can get deeper into understanding what they might have meant. And then after that, we have what are a few ways. I never ask AI for one way to do anything because it's just that what's the point? I don't need one way. I'm trying to use it as brainstorming. So I want like all the ways, right? So what are 3 ways I could scope this?
Mhm.
And then the final pass would be giving it a one paragraph framing to put in a kickoff doc, let's say. And like I would always say, like, I would always like to give context beforehand about that particular stakeholder or that team or the goals.
Mhm.
So giving it context makes it a lot better. And I always, always, always tell it, and this is just great no matter what you are saying to whatever AI, do not hallucinate. And a really great follow-up question to ask is like, are you hallucinating, right? Have you made up any of this? Are you gaslighting me? So yeah, that's like one way to kind of like pull that clarity through if you get a lot of vague requests.
I that's I can't believe I never thought about just saying don't hallucinate or be real with me right now. Did you make any of this up? That's such a simple but like important piece of this.
Yeah, there's a really scary circumstance that I have run into where it just makes up links. It makes up URLs. It just makes up information. And so, especially if I am well, I tend to always ask it, has there been anything that you have made up? This is especially important if you are using this for transcripts and analysis and synthesis.
Hmm.
Um, always ask it, what did you make up?
Hmm.
Because it will tell you. It will be like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I totally lied
Oopsie.
about this. Like, I hate when it does that. I'm like, oh my God, like somebody changed that response. Like some product manager needs to change that response because it's such a rude response. Whereas kind of like, oh my God, yeah, you're right. I totally made all of that up. So always just ask it. That's all you have to do is
Hmm.
ask. And that's the thing with AI is like it is a constant hand-holding event
Yeah.
because as an intern, I will tell you, I made stuff up to sound more smart.
Yeah, I did the thing. Yeah. It's all
Yeah,
done. It's all
yeah.
good.
Yeah, oh look at yeah, like I did the research. It's like Wikipedia, like I'm like, yeah, I did deep research on this, right? So like it is an eager intern that wants to please you. You are sitting in an
Hmm.
echo chamber with it. So always, always like question, question it.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk more about like using your discernment and how important that
Mm.
is in using these tools in general, but
Yes,
it's
got
an
ahead.
excellent example right there. Um, Here's another like tactical example of specific asks you might do in a research pre-mortem.
Yep, yep.
Tell us
Yeah.
about how you approach this one.
This is especially relevant for a big, like a high stakes research study that you might be going into, or something that where you're going into like a room of skeptical people, where I say like this is the idea or this is the plan. And I ask like how essentially how will this fail? Like rip this apart. What are all the things that can go wrong? What about this feels off? Um, what is the worst part of it? Where will it fail? All of those. And then I also ask, like, where does it feel like a check the box study? Like, where does it feel like it's just something that we're doing to say we did research? And then finally, like, what's one question I'm not asking that would completely shift the value of this? Or like, what's one thing that I'm missing that would make this more relevant, that would make this more impactful, that would make this better? Essentially, make it more, relatable to my stakeholders, relevant for the business.
Hmm.
So again, like what you're doing is you're utilizing this again to rip it apart. And you can do this like I had a manager that I was absolutely terrified of, and I wish that I had AI back then, but unfortunately I didn't. So if you have a manager that you're a bit terrified of, you could do like a pre-mortem of like something that you might want to bring up to them or something that you're like nervous about. You could do it like essentially the same thing, like rip it apart. Here's the context of my manager, rip this apart from their context.
Can you imagine having this in your early days of doing research? Because things would have been a lot different for me, I think, if I
Yeah.
had had this tool to help me. Because I've also been in so many situations where I just didn't assess what my stakeholders were going to come back to me with. And
Hmm.
had I been more prepared, a lot of things would have been different.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
luckily we have it now. And this final one, like you said, is about really thinking about how is my potential participant pool or the questions I'm asking somehow biased, or how might I balance this more?
Yeah. Yeah. And this one's quite important if you are thinking about diversifying your participant pools, the people you recruit, maybe even going into a new market or a different market, thinking about accessibility. This is a really great way to ask. And dropping the plan, hearing who am I not hearing from, who might challenge the assumptions that we have, what might make this incomplete or misleading, what kind of participants am I unintentionally filtering out, what's missing from the way that I'm framing these questions. And I will say, like, for all of these frameworks, please keep in mind that you are asking these questions of AI. You're not asking them of an expert. This is just you don't have to take this and redo everything, right? Like, I'm not saying like take all this information and like change your plan. What I'm saying is utilize this as a way to see things that you might not have seen, right? So what are some things that like you might not have noticed? Who might you be like unintentionally filtering out that you might not have known about? Like,
Hmm.
this is not you going to an expert and saying review my research plan and then you changing everything for it. You do need to kind of understand what you should or should not be changing, but it is just to like brainstorm and open up beyond what you might not have seen. And there are times where I ask these questions and it's like I didn't get anything from it, but it's okay
Hmm.
because I'm trying to ask the questions to utilize this as a way to grow my awareness. There are some times where I ask these kinds of questions and I learn a lot from them.
Hmm.
Right. So, like, also take this with a grain of salt. You aren't talking to an expert, right? But you are trying to, like, maybe see from a broader perspective that you might not have thought of before.
Or like approximate that perspective by assigning the role to the
Yes.
AI,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah.
it's not gonna be that perspective, but it's a good approximation of it.
Yes, yes, exactly. It's not going to act as an expert, but like the whole point is not to so we're asking it questions, but the whole point is not for it to just give us the right answer because it won't give us a right answer because there is no really one right answer. If you ask 10 researchers this question, you might get five, six, seven different answers, anyways. And they're all experts potentially. But what it is it's again, it's you're asking the question not for you to get this like super duper perfect expert based answer, but to broaden like oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, I didn't notice that maybe I haven't like even thought about accessibility in my research plan or my recruitment, right? So it's like really just like using this like there's no other way to brainstorm than to ask questions, but
Mhm.
don't use it as like concrete expert-based answers.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's more of a conversation
Yeah.
than anything else. Um, all right, so let's talk about how we can use these tools through the research life cycle and workflow. And something you said earlier about AI being sort of an intern, I just really think that applies to everything we're saying so much. The hand holding, the clear frameworks of what you want to be done, and saving those as GPTs or gems or whatever tool you use to continue to provide that context whenever you need to go back to it. That's something I've been trying to do is like build myself a library of here are the tools that I might need. Here's my tool that's going to help me with my repository. This one is an information management specialist and knows all about that stuff. Um, this one's going to help me with my communication with stakeholders. So building yourself a library of those things, I think, is super important. And then you can put these frameworks into it. Um, so let's talk about how we use a combination of these AI tools with non-AI tools and how it all sort of works together in the research workflow and life cycle. Um, so there are things that you can sort of live in a world where you're just live, laugh, prompt. You don't have to worry about it as much. Of course, you always have to be discerning, but there are certain things in each of these phases that you have to be a little more discerning about and really using your human wisdom and judgment and taste, which are things that your AI tools don't have. So in the planning and recruiting phase, Nikki, talk about the things that you're a little bit more discerning about during this phase.
Yeah, so oftentimes with recruitment, I have pretty specific like criteria that is really important for me to include in something like recruitment. And AI won't understand the context behind that. It will also generate, I don't like it's a personal preference, but for like screener surveys, I don't like yes or no questions. I like context-based questions. So that means instead, have you used this software? Yes or no. I say, like, how often do you use this software? Daily, weekly, monthly, never.
Mhm.
Because not only does that give us additional context, but it also, is generally, in my opinion, a better screener, a stronger screener survey question. Um, so it's like things like that where like I have I have almost 12 years of experience now as a user researcher. I am not going to throw that away because AI might be able to write a screener survey for me. I am going to use that experience and say, "Hey, yeah, I didn't think about that question, but all the other ones suck." Right? Or I'm gonna ask it. I actually asked a question today where I was like, like I was struggling and going very quickly on something, and I was like, I need a list of competitors for this particular product so that I could screen people out with certain competitors against the product. And it gave me a list. It gave me a list of like 20. Am I gonna put 20 competitors in a screener survey? Absolutely not. But it helped me with understanding, okay, here are some of the competitors, right? So it's about like, it's again, it's like avoiding the blank page and getting some ideas going, but then using your wisdom and experience to say, okay, I'm going to either recraft this into something better or throw these out and maybe take this one and again recraft it.
Yeah, so let's on that line of thinking, I tell me about how you feel about using these AI tools in the actual data collection phase. Um, because I think this is where a lot of, I don't know, I think this one is a little trickier. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I am quite careful with using AI with data collection. Um, I have I've used a lot of different AI tools. Um, and I have enjoyed the efficiency that some tools can bring to data collection, and especially like synthesis and analysis. But there are some circumstances where I am just like, uh, this isn't 100% what I need, for instance. So like actually up here, like if one of the things that I absolutely hate doing is writing unmoderated testing tasks. I hate writing those. If I could defer those to anybody, I would because they are horrible. I just hate writing usability testing tasks, especially unmoderated because they need to be perfect. So I
Mhm.
will help with things like that, but like I'm not gonna use AI to like create the flow because
Mhm.
I'm gonna I'm gonna do that.
And
Right?
well, I think the thing that's so annoying about writing those tasks is like understanding what the participant is going to come up against. And like, depending on what the experience is, it might be stuff again that you don't even see. Like when I was working in games, like an open world game,
Oh.
I can't predict what people are going to do in an open world. Like it's very non-linear and it's very hard to write a task for those situations. So yeah, I would not trust an AI tool to help me in doing that as much as I would in asking it to like make this clearer. What I already have decided to say, how can I say it even better?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I would use it. But I think
100%.
for a lot of us, I don't know, maybe I'll just speak for myself. I have found a lot of use for AI in analyzing. I'm not going to say like synthesizing as much, but analyzing data. I feel like this is where AI can be super, super helpful and in the reporting out of the data, because it's pretty good at writing too.
Yeah.
Um, so this I feel like is where things get a little more exciting and where like Dscout particularly has tools that are super helpful in doing some of this stuff. Um, let's talk real quickly about how, your thoughts on analyzing and reporting, and then we're going to move into some questions.
Yeah. So for this, I will always say check with your legal team, please, before you do anything. Um,
So
you
important.
can't just throw stuff into AI. Always check with your legal team. So for instance, I have one company that I am currently doing advisory work for, and I checked with their legal team on what I can and cannot put into ChatGPT. Right. So always check. And there are some great tools out there that do help specifically with analysis, and synthesis and reporting. And the best and most privacy-based tools will be those tools that are like literally built for researchers. But I always use it as like it's almost like a first pass. And then I will hand hold it through the process. So for me, it can be a really great initial pass at what might be there, what are the like general themes that are coming out, what are the kind of like bigger summaries that AI might have caught, and then I will go in and like dig out more complex things that I could not have seen.
Hmm.
I will go into the more like the tone maybe that has been used that I could not pick up. Um, or if it's like a super duper complex study, that's when I might again do like a summary first pass, but I will go much deeper in it. Like this is almost like again, it's like avoiding that blank page syndrome. And it can also what's quite nice is it can give you ideas on how to analyze. So you can like even go a step before and like kind of like use it as like how might I be able to analyze this, like what are some tactics that I could use to analyze this in a really effective way. So you can also use that as like a brainstorming mechanism. But again, it depends so heavily on your tool and your company. Always check and always talk through these things. And another thing that I hugely recommend, as much as you can, make this a collaborative exercise with your product team potentially. Like so walk through like analysis, like together, like AI analysis together with your product team, your designers, your PMs, other researchers to like almost try and make it fun if you can, to kind of like be like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, like experiment and test those things together so that everybody is learning. And
Mhm.
that kind of takes some of the stress off of like what happens if my product manager puts this in and asks how much do people love it, and AI is like, it's the best thing ever.
Yeah. I have become so much more open arms with bringing other folks into the research
Yeah.
process in the past several years, rather than I'm the researcher and I have to do this,
Yes.
because it only empowers people to do it better and to understand your job more, which is good. And I love what you said about like, so the legal thing is, like super, super important. And that's why sometimes not all of us can use these like more generalized AI tools. So your research tools that you already use, the AI features that are coming into those tools, like Dscout, um, can be really nice because A, you don't have to give it the context that it's in a research environment. It already knows that. And it sort of helps with some of those privacy things that you might have to deal with when you're taking it out of some place and pasting it into another place. So we actually have a webinar tomorrow, for those who would like to attend about one of our new AI features that we're working on at Dscout. So we'll give you a link at the end, but if you want to learn about this, you should go to that and you'll hear all of the things about it. Um, so I'd love to get to some of your questions now. I see that we have quite a few. So let's see what we can. Okay, so first we have, if at your company you don't have the luxury of just jumping in and testing out um, an AI tool without use cases that will convince your stakeholders who make these decisions, how can you sell that idea to them? Do you have thoughts on this, Nikki, as particularly as a on the consulting arm?
Um, so yes and no. So what I always do is like, what is the cost savings versus the cost that you will be utilizing potentially with using AI tools. So I would say if you can get extended demos for things so that you can actually showcase what the benefit would be, what the impact would be, that would be something that I would recommend doing. Or if you've worked with tools in the past that have been really effective, I would say, okay, like what did you see was effective? How will it help the organization? It's the same, like I would honestly put this into GPT and ask, like given my stakeholders, what is the pushback and how can I like overcome that pushback? Give it the context. But I would say like you always have to think about what are they going to pay and what's the benefit that will outweigh whatever you will be able to
Mhm.
pay. And like you don't want to sell the idea of using AI for powering UX and UI. You want to sell the idea, you want to sell the benefit,
Mhm.
right?
What
Not
problem
the
are you
idea.
solving?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
want to you want to already get to that end result and sell that end result, not the idea of it, but the actual end result. So try and brainstorm that kind of information of what's the end result that your company will be getting from this and
Hmm.
sell that instead.
Yeah, as if it were any tool. It doesn't, you're not selling the AI, you're selling, I'm going to be
Yeah,
solving this problem and here's
yeah,
how. And also,
yeah,
I think that's where some of your examples come in about like giving it the context of who the
yeah,
stakeholder is and how to talk to them about it.
yeah.
And also, using other AI tools that you have access to for personal reasons can be a way to sort of understand how they might work before going to your stakeholders about it.
Yeah.
Um, when researching business critical functionality, how do you ensure confidentiality when using publicly available AI tools that aim to absorb and learn from your inputs?
You
My
don't.
answer to this is I don't.
Yeah, you don't.
yeah, I personally only use the tools that are approved by our company, that have, already gone through the legal process of saying this is what can and can't be, and we have guidelines for what you can and can't
Yeah.
use them for. Um, and I simply would not
Yep.
put in data to those publicly available tools.
Yeah, only what is approved 100%. Or what you can do is reach out to your legal or security, IT, all of them, and kindly ask them what are the guidelines, and maybe that is you helping them move forward and making them if you don't have them.
Yeah, unfortunately. Um, okay, how do you balance utilizing LLMs for critiquing research plans or other deliverables while maintaining company and client privacy? A lot of these questions are about privacy.
Yeah.
Um, and so again, like simply only using the tools that are approved, but also if you have tools where you're able to use them, but you can't use like certain like client data within them, there are ways to anonymize things, um,
Yeah.
just by being a little more vague. Have you come into this problem, Nikki?
Yeah, so like if you're working for a like travel company, you can get general travel information. So you don't have to put in, it's like think about it about when you're sharing your case studies and you can't maybe say who you were working for, or there's confidential information that you can't share in your case study, but you have to share the gist of what happened, right? So like try to like give it a little bit more, you can go more generic, because again, you're not looking for an exact answer, because even if you put all of that beautiful private confidential information in, you're not going to get an exact answer. So remember to like kind of take a step back and be like, what am I trying to accomplish with this, and how can I use it as a brainstorm mechanism rather than like a exact answer. So like everybody cares about revenue, right? Every business cares about revenue. So if I'm working for a travel company who cares about revenue, I can talk about that. I don't have to give specifics, and it can still help me with generating ideas, which then I can link back to something that's more specific within my particular context and organization.
So true. Everyone cares about revenue. Um, we have a question about ResOps, which, as I said, is my passion. What ResOps tasks are best suited for AI from your experience? I am obsessed with using AI as an information management specialist to help me optimize. Well, I used it to help me build my research repository for our Voice of Customer program, but using it to ask those questions that I would really have to have a good hard think on. Like, from your perspective as an information management specialist, what's the best way to go about storing this new type of data in my repository, and how should I set that up? Or even just knowledge about the tool that you're using for your repository. In this tool, how can I set up an automation that will, you know, grab the username and connect it to this or that? Like, super, super quickly, you can get answers to those just like really tactical questions that frees you up from having to like read a bunch of help docs. That has been like my favorite use case for it. And Nikki, you're not really doing the RevOps thing in your consulting as much, but are there those sort of ops things that you find that it's helpful for?
I mean, I have to do ops for my business.
Yep.
So a lot of like automation based, like how do I automate this? My Zapier sucks for this. How do I make it not suck? Or this broke. How do I make this easier for myself? So it's more like your context of like, this is a time suck for me. How do I make it more efficient? Like help me brainstorm those things and then try and pick one or two and experiment with them. I do some ResOps with one current client, and we are also using it for repository building. We're using Notebook though, so a little bit different.
We have an interesting question specifically for Nikki. that I would love to ask. Um, can you talk about some, if any, of the personal pitfalls you've observed as you've become more reliant on AI? Um, are you leaning on it for things that maybe normally you would have to think about? Um, do you feel like you're too reliant on it?
Um, I was too reliant on it, and leaned on it, I think, too heavily to the point where I would use it to help me construct an email that I literally could have just constructed myself, probably faster than it ended up constructing it for me because I had to like then change everything. So there was a point in which I was over reliant on it. And then I realized that it wasn't helping me ultimately save time. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to dial back on this and just like really utilize it for the things that actually help me save time rather than trying to force it into something that it's not. So like I just took a step back from it for a while. One thing that was quite sad for me, that was the actual reason behind this, is I'm a fiction writer. And I heavily, heavily, heavily care about the fiction world. And I got stuck and tried to utilize AI in fiction writing, which is like if you are a part of the fiction world, everybody will hate you if you do that. And I hated myself for it too, to be honest, because I utilized it as like a crutch. And I would say like that's the point in which I took that step back from it. And I was like, this is like sucking the joy out of everything because I'm no longer like thinking and able to like infuse creativity into like day-to-day stuff. So that's kind of what I'm still working on, and still trying to like navigate, but it's gotten a lot better.
I think what you just said about like not I think that's sort of the whole vibe I kind of want to bring to this conversation is like don't let this suck the fun out
Yeah.
of your work and your life and like allow it to be a creative assistant to you,
Yeah.
but like maintain your creativity, maintain your um
Yourself.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you're really what's bringing all of this to the table. Like these tools can help you figure out how to get from A to B, but the idea of getting there is like yours. And I don't know, I creativity is really important to me, just like in my work in general. And so I like to try to keep that in mind when I'm using these tools. Like just yeah, do not allow this to suck the fun out of your work or the creativity or make you feel like this thing can do your job better than you because it simply can't. There are so many more questions I want to answer. We don't have time, unfortunately, but I think we can probably like answer some of them via People Nerds afterwards. I do want to just provide these two QR codes for anybody who wants to capture them. Um, one is for the webinar tomorrow that I mentioned about some of our new upcoming AI features that you'll probably be interested in. And then another is Nikki's guide for how to use these kind of things, how to build better products with AI supported research. So how to use your current tools with AI tools in combination. Um, Thank you so much for joining us. I have had a blast. Nikki, did you have fun?
Thank you. Yeah. I love the good leading question there. How much fun did you have?
It
Yeah, I
was
had a
fun,
great
right?
time. I had a great time. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you guys tomorrow at the other webinar. Bye, everybody.
Amazing. Thank you. Bye.